And I'm not saying no, but I need you to roll, 'cause you know what I like in the devil inside. Work on West one more time.
Hey, welcome to Behind the Roots. It's the first episode. We got Mason Bailey, who races up in Virginia here with us, races in the NASCAR All-American Series. Mason, good to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is awesome.
Yeah, man. So crazy how I got in touch with Mason. So I'm friends with, or one of Adam's friends went to school with Mason. So one time I was talking to Adam's friend, and he was like, "Oh, dude, I know a guy up in Virginia or Richmond, and he races races late miles. So y'all should you should follow him on Instagram." So when we started this series, it was just a obvious choice that we should hit up Mason and get him to come on. But Mason, why don't you just tell us a little about yourself and what got you started in racing?
All right. Well, first, that mutual friend was Kent Tag, right?
Yeah.
And this all happened over Xbox Live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the chances of that? That's nuts.
That's how Josh and I actually met, was over Xbox Live in NASCAR Heat.
Yeah. Well, so one of my good friends, now roommate, and like my right-hand man on the race team, I met him when iRacing. So there's something said about a little video game action out there.
Oh yeah.
Shout out Kent Tag. But yeah. Anyway, your question. Sorry. What was it again? Can you repeat it?
Oh yeah. Could you just talk about your roots a little bit and what got you into racing and just the whole backstory on Mason?
Yeah. So like that's the question I get asked all the time, and you'd think after racing for like 7-8 years now I'd have like a really good answer, but still working on it. So like my dad grew up racing dirt bikes. He ran flat track, if anybody knows what that is. So like I've been exposed to racing. Like he was a race fan. Family was like a racing family, I guess. But I didn't really start racing until I was, I don't know, like 9 or 10 years old, which is kind of old for like nowadays. It seems young to people outside the sport, but inside, everybody else gets started like 5-6 years old. But I think it was G-Force go-karts. You know G-Force?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had a birthday party there when I was 8, and I think that's what really did it. Is I was like, this is nuts. I think I want to do this like for real. So after that, we got a legit go-kart. Like kept it, maintained ourselves, and we traveled the East Coast racing that. And then I decided it was like freshman and sophomore year of high school. I decided I want to get into cars because like that's what everybody else was doing, right? When you turn 14, 15 nowadays, like you just get into a full-blown race car. And I was like, Dad, like, let's get some race cars. And he was like, that's awesome, man, but you're on your own. So I went out, got some sponsorship, and I sold him on the idea that I was like this big-time race car driver. And then I took that sponsorship. We bought some race cars and went from there.
Yeah, it sounds like the classic start to racing. There you got your exceptions with the Elliott family, where you got basically a full ride through your early racing career, but then you got a lot of just gunslingers down low who they go out there, get their own sponsorship, and they get in the car and they stun a lot of people. But do you have so you're based in Richmond, race a lot at Southside Speedway, which sadly no longer exists. Do you have a favorite race, Virginia, the one that basically is like you call your bread and butter track?
I mean, Southside, really my home track because like I run there more than anywhere else, and that's where I started. But as far as bread and butter, I don't know, man. That place is tough. That's tough. Every week, anyone can win. So I'd call that my home track. Bread and butter, man. I don't know. I don't know if you call that any of them for me, really. But I guess to answer your question, yeah, Southside's the home track. We've been messing around at Dominion just here recently. We started running there this summer, and we plan to run there full time next year. And we've run a little bit of Martinsville, a little bit of Langley. So we've ventured out a little bit. So it's been fun.
Got a question, Josh?
Oh yeah. So you said when we were talking about interviewing, Henry mentioned you. I was like, I knew his name from somewhere, and you mentioned racing at Southside. I was like, that's where I know his name from. So I always went to races there. Haven't made it up to Dominion, Langley, any of the other ones. I really just started going to Southside. But you look at all like the different tracks in Virginia. There's such a variety of different tracks. Have you ventured down south, hit like the Hickories, Bowman Grays down in North Carolina?
You know what? I wish I had. I mean, I have, but I haven't. So here's the deal. So I used to work. I'm sure y'all know the name Sam Hunt,
Mm-hmm.
um, racing, not the country singer, but the racing guy. So I used to work. He was from James River High School, and he's from like Midlothian area. So like really local to us. And I got hooked up with him. And when I was in high school, I used to work on his K&N team. So like after
Okay.
school, I would go work on his race cars, and then with him, I traveled just about everywhere. I mean, we went Florida all the way to Ohio, a little bit to the Midwest and stuff like that. So I mean, I've been to all those tracks, but I've never turned any laps on them. So um, I really want to do that, and I think this year is going to be a really fun year because I think we're going to get the chance to do that. One, because we got the sponsorship to be able to travel, which is something we've never really been able to get. It's always kept us tight to Southside with all these local companies. But with Southside shut down, it was bittersweet because that's our home track, but it's kind of given me the opportunity to travel some more. So we're looking at races like Rockingham and the Hampton Heat, and um, there's some money races down in North Carolina. So we don't know what exactly we're gonna run, but now for the first time we have the opportunity to go out and travel around and have some fun with that.
Yeah, it's funny. Sam Hunt's like a spotter that works for Sam Hunt, Jesse Vaughn. He's from the Richmond area.
Oh
I know
yeah,
him. I race with him in a iRacing league on Monday nights. He's a real cool guy. Didn't really realize how much like NASCAR roots we have here in Richmond until you look at it and they're like, oh, Denny from Chesterfield. You got Greg Galding from Colonial Heights. A bunch of people come from Central Virginia, but I know a couple people racing in like the Hampton Heats and stuff. But looking at the future of grassroots racing, a lot of people are saying that this year is going to be like a real resurgence from ARCA all the way down to late models and like Legends cars. Where do you see the future of grassroots racing going?
so you know what? There's a lot of negativity out there about short track racing and just racing in general, like the costs of it and like the money beating the talent for rides and stuff like that. But I'm pretty bullish on the future of on racing, but specifically short track racing, because you go to these races and like even this past summer, for example, when we're in like a global pandemic, um, and I don't know, this could be a bad thing, I guess, but you go to Dominion and like stands are packed, man. There's plenty of people at these races all over the country, just the last couple years. So I mean, the fan bases are there. If they're growing or shrinking, I don't know. But I look up in the stands and I see plenty of people. We'll be red flagged on the backstretch at Dominion, and there's 200 people tailgating on the back fence right there, waving at us. So it's like there's plenty of people. The car counts are good. Um, I think back in like 2016, 2017, they got a little low, but since then I've seen car counts go up, and I think that has a lot to do with the rules and the economy. Like late model and short track racing, the rules have been kind of stagnant for the last couple of years, which is a good thing because anytime they change, it it creates an expense for the teams where they have to buy a new motor or buy new parts to take and fit the rule book. But um, NASCAR's done a good job, I think, bringing parity to like the engine program and the late models and stuff like that. So it's allowed people like me to not have to spend a ton of money to go race it. So I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm really bullish on short track racing, and I think it's growing a little bit. And it's surviving. It's certainly not dying like a lot of keyboard warriors on Facebook like to say.
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I went to Southside. And that's why I was really shocked that it was closing down because tickets aren't, I mean, they're $16 to get in the Southside. You're paying just as much to go to a race at Dominion. But whenever I went to Southside, the stands were packed. My dad talked about how he used to go and have buddies who race, and the stands were just as packed then as they are now. And that's why I was shocked because people are still coming out to these Friday night, Saturday night races. And sucks that Southside shut down. That was such a cool track to go to. But I hope the grassroots racing can continue on. People mention it's a pretty expensive sport to get into, but the guys down that like you, late model drivers, legend cars, that's where the racing's at. That's where the true racing's at. People don't get butthurt if they get a bumper going into a turn and getting
Right,
past.
right.
So that's the best racing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Southside was a good example, like you just listed. Like opening night the last 3 years, I don't think it's ever sold out, but like it's packed, man. Like you said,
Mhm.
there's plenty of people there, like well over 60% capacity, I would guess. And then even on the worst nights, where you get a lot of rain on a Friday and it scares away a lot of the fans, and you end up running the race. It might be 30%, 20% capacity, and it's still not terrible. So yeah, there's plenty of fans out there, and it's really neat to see because that's what's important. But and then like you mentioned, the short tracks, late model racing, and all that's I think growing. I think car counts are moving up slowly, and like ARCA and K&N, I think a lot of those people. I don't know. That's kind of a different subject, but that price point, I think either people are moving up or they're moving down. They're kind of getting out of that middle ground.
Mhm.
But I think that's a good thing for the sport to consolidate these teams and drivers into certain areas. So you get more late models and more Xfinity teams and stuff like that instead of being so spread out over 30 different divisions.
Yeah, it's definitely a good thing. So, every time I talk to a driver who's at the lower level, the grassroots racing, the late miles and stuff, I can't help but ask: is there a driver that you've watched growing up, or even today, that you want to emulate, or you try to emulate their driving style, like a Kyle Larson? I know you can't do it at Southside, but like a
Right.
Kyle Larson driver where you're right up against the wall, or there's so many different driving styles. So is there one driver that you've kind of looked up to and worked to try to race like they do?
Um, you know, I might be a little weird one to ask because I really don't have like favorites or anything when it comes to sports in general, but even racing. Like, I don't have a single driver's autograph or anything, and it's not because I don't like them. It's just I don't know. I've never really looked at someone like that. But I do have a lot of respect for some of the people who've been in it a while, and there's been some people who I've looked at and I've tried to emulate not necessarily their driving style, but the way they handle like their racing programs, like Shane Lockhart, for example. Um, I never saw him race, but I got to work with him when he worked and he managed the K&N team, and the way he ran that team and the principles he kind of implored on that team really stuck with me. And it's people like him and um, there's a couple others that I try to, I guess like you said, emulate off the track. But you named Larson. I'm a huge Larson fan. I will say I don't like I don't have favorites or anything, but Larson is someone I do root for just because he is like a grassroots guy, got there on talent, all the adversity he's gone through, seen him come back. It's so fun to watch him. So um, I guess I do try to emulate just the amount of winning he does. Like that's something I'd like to emulate.
Oh yeah, we all would.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm sure winning never gets old, but I can't. We can't think about it. Can't not think about it. How we've just kind of been in the house all this time, and like everybody else in NASCAR, they went to iRacing. So, have you been relying heavily on like the simulator and stuff to just kind of stay in the groove of things until race season starts back up?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think the answer is very dependent on who you talk to. I used to iRace a lot when I was in school because I was in North Carolina and I didn't have the luxury to go to my race shop every night because I was so far from it. I have to travel back home on the weekends. So during the
Mhm.
week, I did a lot of iRacing and I had a lot of fun with it. But now that I'm back in town, I don't do so much of it. I like to spend um, my time working on my cars because at the end of the day, I'm the one responsible for preparing my cars and making sure they're right. So, and as a driver, I want to be the best driver I can be. So I try to stack the cards in my favor by building the best cars I can build. So, so that's where I spend a lot of my time. But iRacing is a tool. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's interesting. iRacing gets a lot of things correct, but there's a couple flaws that it has, like in the setups.
Mhm.
And for better or for worse, I do a lot of the setups on my own cars. So like I know, what we're doing on the setup, spring rates and the geometry and stuff like that. And when I get on iRacing and I try to do it, it just doesn't work out. So I'll go through phases where me and my roommates will iRace for a week or 2 weeks straight, and then we'll get our butts kicked by somebody who's really good at iRacing and knows the virtual setups and kind of the glitches of the game, and then we'll give up. But typically, we just end up going dirt racing on iRacing because I don't have a clue how to build a dirt late model. So I don't know what if I'm doing, if it's right or wrong, but we have fun doing it. So it's keeping me fresh. Yeah, I think it keeps the hand-eye coordination fresh. It keeps your mind thinking because the racecraft is all the same still. You know,
Mhm.
the passing and saving and setting people up and everything works the same. But at the same time, it can teach you some bad habits. I learned that, and so you just got to take it with a grain of salt. But I use it for fun mostly.
Yeah, I just recently got into it, and in May I went and got a computer and the steering wheel and all that. So I've been on it a lot most of quarantine, and dirt racing is definitely one of the most fun things I have on there. But when we in the podcast every week, we give our hot takes and dark horse for the upcoming week. So Daytona 500 this weekend. Let's hear a hot take and a dark horse. Who can win it?
Oh man, so yeah, that's a tough question, especially the 500. Y'all set me up for failure because anything can happen on that one. But I will say my dark horse. Some people, it might not be a dark horse for some, but I'm gonna go with Bubba Wallace, and the reason being, um, I think he's all right, but I'm really curious about like the program that got going on. What is it like the 23XL, the race team?
Yeah.
2311.
Okay, 2311. Yeah. So, um, his crew chief is Mike Wheeler, which is Denny Hamlin's old crew chief. And when they parted ways at the end of like 2019, I was like really curious because they didn't like Toyota didn't drop him. So I was like, where's this guy gonna end up at? So I think they kind of had this plan a couple years ago. But I'm really curious to see what Mike Wheeler and Bubba Wallace can do because I think Mike Wheeler's a really smart dude and kind of a fan of his. As far as a hot take, shoot, man. A hot take, is that like a controversial opinion or something?
It can be just something that could happen. Like my hot take for the Clash last week was that the winner's going to win by 3 or more seconds. It can just be anything. Prediction of the race.
Don't make a prediction about the rain though, because I did that last year around I think around like late or I don't even
Beginning
know
of
which
summer,
race it was
maybe.
after. No, it was beginning of the summer, probably late May. I said that there won't going to be a rain delayed race for the rest of the summer, and I think 3 weeks later we had a stint of about 3 rain delays, so I got destroyed on that take. But you know, any type of take you have that isn't, you know, it's I guess what you could say controversial, but basically the opposite of Denny Hamlin's going to win the 500.
I hear you. That's that's a bold prediction. But my hot take, Roush Fenway isn't gonna suck.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah,
He's
let's
got-
get a return of
Newman's
Ryan
coming back
Newman.
with vengeance this year. He's ready to win.
Hell yeah, man. They're gonna do big things.
Yeah, that would be
Restrictor
quite the
plate racing.
storyline.
Just restrictor plate racing. Anything else, they're probably gonna go back to sucking. But 500 wise, they might be all right.
All right, Mason. Well, thanks for coming on. It was awesome talking to you, talking racing, and talking the Daytona 500. So, where can we find you on social media?
Well, I got a Facebook, just Mason Bailey. I don't have like a racing page or anything like that, just my personal, but I like to post race cars on there all the time. And then my Instagram, I'm on there all the time. I think that's Mason Bailey 05. I like to post race cars on there too. And then on iRacing, add me up on iRacing because I get one infrequently, but you'll find me on there, and I love to mess around with my buddies and have a good time. So hit me up on iRacing or we're on Discord. I don't even know.
All
If I
right.
have a name on Discord, how does that work?
Yeah, I have no idea how that works, but if you like pictures of race cars, go follow Mason on all your social medias. So appreciate it again for coming out, and hope you have the best of luck in your racing career.
Absolutely, guys. Thank y'all so much, and thanks for the podcast. I think racing needs more of this stuff, and it's really cool y'all are doing this, and it was a lot of fun to meet y'all. Hopefully, we can hang out in person this season.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Thank you.
All right, guys.
And I'm not saying no, but I need you to go, 'cause you know what I like, and the